The night Karen's chimney exploded, the whole neighborhood woke up. Flames shot out like a blowtorch. Her screams echoed down the street. People ran. Sirens wailed. And I just stood there, watching. But this story didn't start with fire. It started with quiet theft. Every morning, my firewood pile was smaller. At first I thought I was miscounting. Then I noticed footprints. Same shoe. Same direction. Night after night. So I set up a camera. And there she was. Karen. President of the HOA. The woman who fined me for having my trash bins out 14 minutes early. Sneaking into my yard. Stealing my wood. Smiling while she did it. She didn't take it because she needed it. She took it to prove she had control. That's when something inside me snapped. Because Karen didn't just steal firewood. She lit a fuse. So I let her keep stealing. Log after log. Night after night. She never noticed what I hid inside them. Not until the day her house went up in smoke. I moved into this neighborhood because it looked peaceful. Tall trees, clean sidewalks, quiet evenings where you could hear the wind move through the leaves. The kind of place where nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen. I thought I had found a safe corner of life. A place where I could breathe. But peace is something that can be taken from you without a sound. The neighborhood was controlled by the HOA. The Homeowners Association. Everyone talked about it like it was something normal. But I didn't really understand what it meant, until it was too late. In most places, the HOA just handles lawns, decorations, things like that. But here, the HOA was like a government. There were rules for everything. How tall your grass could be. When you could put your trash cans out. What color your curtains could be if they were visible from the street. Even how long your car could be parked in your own driveway. And at the very center of all of this, was Karen. Karen wasn't just the HOA president. She was the queen of control. She was in her early 50s, short blonde hair, always wearing bright exercise outfits even though no one ever saw her exercise. She walked the neighborhood with a clipboard like it was a badge of authority. Every morning. Every afternoon. Every night. Her eyes didn't look at houses. They inspected them. Judged them. Measured them. I tried to avoid her. I really did. The first time we spoke, she didn't say hello. She didn't ask my name. She just pointed at my garbage bin sitting near the driveway and said, "You'll want to keep those behind the fence." HOA Rule Number 14. Section C. No smile. No friendliness. Only control. I nodded. Moved the bins. Didn't argue. Because I didn't move here to fight anyone. I just wanted quiet. For a while, life settled. Days passed normally. Work. Home. Evening tea on the porch. The sound of birds. The smell of pine from my backyard. I had a small wood pile I used in winter. Splitting wood was something I enjoyed. It made me feel grounded. The first time I noticed something wrong, it was small. One log missing. Just one. Maybe I miscounted. Maybe I forgot. Maybe I misunderstood. I shook it off. But the next morning, another log was missing. Then two more. Then four. It was too exact. Too consistent. Someone was taking my firewood. At first, I thought maybe kids needed it for a campfire. It didn't anger me. Just confused me. I walked around the yard. There were no broken fences. No footprints in the soil. No signs of forced entry. But then I noticed something. Something that made my stomach tighten. The back gate latch was slightly shifted. Not broken. Not damaged. Just moved. Like someone had opened it very quietly, and very carefully. The back gate was only there because the HOA required it. Visual uniformity, they said. But now I realized something, that gate wasn't for uniformity. It was a doorway someone could use. A quiet door. A hidden entrance. And someone was using it. The problem with suspicion is that it eats your mind. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Again and again. What if someone was watching your home? What if they came again tonight? What if they were enjoying the idea of you not knowing? That night, I couldn't sleep. The firewood was not expensive. That wasn't the point. It was the intrusion. The disrespect. The quiet invasion of something personal. Someone was entering my world without permission. So the next day, I went to the hardware store. I bought a trail camera. Motion activated. Silent. Invisible in the dark. I strapped it to a tree behind the wood pile. A place no one would look twice at. Then, I waited. The night dragged on slowly. I sat in the living room with all the lights off. Every small sound felt louder. My breathing felt heavier. The house felt too still. Hours passed. I almost thought no one would come. Then. Click. The camera made a faint snapping sound, a sound only I would notice. Someone was there. But I didn't run outside. I didn't move. I waited until morning. When the sun rose, I walked to the tree. Hand steady. Heart slow. No fear. No panic. Just cold focus. I took the camera inside. Connected it to my laptop. The video opened. A figure stepped into the frame. Not a stranger. Not a teenager. Not a homeless person. Karen. Gloves on. Flashlight held in her teeth. Opening the gate. Moving straight to the woodpile. Picking up logs carefully, almost like she was selecting them. Carrying them back to her car. Loading them in the trunk. And the worst part? She wasn't stealing with fear. She was smiling. Like she owned this. Like she owned me. I didn't breathe for a few seconds. Not from shock. But from understanding. This wasn't about firewood. It was about control. She was taking something from me. Not because she needed it. But because she wanted me to notice it was disappearing. She wanted me to feel powerless. She wanted to show me. This is my neighborhood. You live here because I allow it. And that was the moment something inside me broke. Not loudly. Quietly. Like a switch flipping. I closed the laptop. Sat in silence. And I knew. This would not end with a conversation. Not with a complaint. Not with a police report. No. People like Karen don't stop when asked. They stop when they learn. And I would be the one to teach her. When you finally understand someone's intention, it changes everything. Before seeing the footage, I was confused. Annoyed. Unsure. After seeing Karen stealing with that smile, there was no confusion left. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't need. It wasn't even personal. It was power. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the glow from the laptop screen still burning in my mind. The house felt colder than usual. Quieter. Like the walls themselves were waiting to see what I'd do next. I replayed the video again. Not because I needed to confirm anything. But because I was studying her. The way she moved. Slow. Confident. Certain no one would ever dare challenge her. I remembered the first time I saw that same confidence. It was the day I moved in. I was unloading boxes from the truck. I was tired, sweaty, excited, just trying to settle in. And she walked up to me like she already owned my house. You'll need to repaint that fence. The color doesn't match the HOA approved palette. No welcome. No introduction. Just an order. Back then, I laughed it off. Told myself it wasn't worth a fight. Now I understood something. When you give someone like Karen even 1 inch, she takes a mile. And then she demands more. She didn't want my firewood. She wanted me to know she could take it. She wanted me to feel small. That realization changed something inside me. Something deep. I wasn't going to ask why. I already knew why. I wasn't going to talk to her. Talking to people like her only feeds their ego. I wasn't going to involve the HOA. She was the HOA. And I definitely wasn't calling the police. Because to them, it's just wood. But to me, this was about home. About boundaries. About self-respect. And when someone attacks those, you don't negotiate. You respond. Watching her pattern. I didn't act right away. Revenge isn't something you rush. Revenge is slow. Sharp. Precise. So I observed. Every night for the next week, she came back. Always around 1:40 a.m. Always through the same gate. Always wearing gloves. Always carrying that little flashlight between her teeth. And always with that small, satisfied smile. As if she were doing community service. As if she believed she was correcting me. I started noticing more. Little things. A smug tilt of her chin whenever we crossed paths during the day. The way she lingered slightly longer when she walked past my house. The faintest smirk when she saw me outside working. She knew I was noticing the firewood disappearing. She wanted me to notice. It wasn't theft. It was dominance. And that was the breaking point. The research. I didn't want to hurt her. Not physically. Not in a way that would ruin her life. No. That would make me the villain. I wanted something else entirely. I wanted consequences. The kind you feel. Remember. Carry. Consequences that change a person. So I started looking for something specific. A way to give her exactly what she wanted. But in a form she would never want again. Hours of searching. Forums. DIY channels. Woodworking groups. Pyrotechnics safety guides. And then, I found what I needed. Hollow decorative logs. They're used for interior design. Lightweight. Real wood shell. Empty inside. I ordered them. No questions asked. When they arrived, I held one in my hands. It looked so normal. So harmless. So perfect. I set them on my workbench. And then came the second part. The filling. I didn't want anything lethal. No mutilation. No tragedy. Just shock. Noise. Impact. So I chose firework grade black powder. Legal to buy. Legal to own. But powerful enough to create one hell of a reaction when exposed to open flame in an enclosed space. Not a house-destroying explosion. Not a death trap. Just a sudden, violent burst of flame and pressure strong enough to blow open a fireplace, send smoke billowing, shake the house and terrify the person responsible. Not enough to injure. Just enough to teach. And while I filled each hollow log. While I sealed each end with wood glue. While I sanded and stained each one to match the rest. I didn't feel anger. I felt something else. Clarity. This wasn't revenge out of rage. This was balance. The setup. I waited for the perfect night. Clear skies. Cold air. Quiet neighborhood. Nothing unusual happening. I carried the logs outside. Placed them carefully. Mixed them with the real wood. Scattered them like playing cards in a deck. One real log. One hollow one. One real. One hollow. From the outside, they were identical. Even to someone who had handled hundreds of logs. You couldn't tell the difference. As I worked, I felt calm. Focused. My hands steady. My breathing slow. There was no guilt. No fear. No doubt. Because at this point, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoring the boundary she tore apart. You don't enter someone's home and take from them. You don't try to prove dominance by stealing their peace. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The night before. Like clockwork, she came. 1:40 a.m. Gate opened. Flashlight between teeth. Gloves on. She selected logs. Placed them neatly in her trunk. Closed the gate softly. Walked away calm, casual, untouchable. But she didn't know the truth. She took her own lesson. With her own hands. She took the fuse. She carried it home. And I knew. Tomorrow evening. Everything would change. Not violently. Not tragically. But permanently. Because tomorrow. The fire would burn back. And Karen would finally learn. Control is only real. Until someone stops letting you have it. The evening was normal. Ordinary. Cold. Clear. I made tea. Sat by the window. Watched the streetlights wake one by one. My hands were steady. My heart was quiet. I had done what I had to do. No excitement. No rush. Just a soft, strange calm. I told myself 100 times, this is not about hurting anyone. It is about stopping someone who thinks she can take what she wants. Time moved slowly. Minutes stretched. Then minutes folded into each other. At 9:05 p.m. I closed the blinds. Turned off the lights. The house went dark, but not silent. The night sounds came in. A distant dog barked. An engine passed on the main road. Leaves whispered in the wind. I sat very still. Then, much later, I heard it. At first I thought it was thunder. But the sky was clear. The sound came from nearby. A sharp, sudden blast. A breaking sound. Glass chimed like a bell. My windows jumped. The cup in my hand shook. I stood up slowly. Adrenaline pulled at my spine. Outside, people were already shouting. Footsteps pounded on porches. Car alarms started to wail like frightened birds. I walked to the front door. When I opened it, the street looked unreal. Neighbors in pajamas. Flashlights moving like slow suns. Phones held up, recording. Across the road, smoke crawled from a chimney. Not thick, black smoke like a house on fire. More like soot that had been pushed out hard. Dark and angry. Karen was in her driveway. Her hair frizzy. Her face streaked with ash. She was yelling. Confused. Angry. Scared. My fireplace exploded, she shouted. My fireplace, who gave me this wood? Who sold it? Her voice trembled. For the first time I heard fear in it. Not the small, controlled anger she always wore. This was raw. People gathered. Neighbors stared. Whispers moved like wind between houses. Someone called 911. Someone else took a phone and filmed. Someone brought blankets. Someone checked her porch light, like checking whether the world was still the same. I stood back. I did not move forward. I watched. My chest felt tight. Not from guilt. Not exactly. From the weight of what I had set into motion. There is a strange silence in the middle of chaos. A quiet that lives between the noise. I walked through that silence. It felt heavy on my skin. Karen's door opened. She stumbled out, slapping at her clothes to remove the ash. Her neighbors surrounded her with questions. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? What happened? She kept asking the same thing, who did this? No one answered. A small group of children watched from their steps. Eyes wide. Mouths open. This was more exciting than any game. An officer arrived. He talked to Karen. He walked the yard. He looked at the chimney. He asked, politely at first, then with a more serious tone. I listened to the officers speak. They asked the neighbor who first called. They checked the yard for signs of arson. They took photographs. They wrote notes. The neighborhood hummed with questions. I felt my hands go cold. A woman 2 houses down cried softly. She's lucky, she said. No one got hurt. Her voice was thin. Relief and fear braided together. Karen watched her fireplace like it had betrayed her. She looked smaller. Like the armor she wore every day had been knocked off. Later, at some point, a man from the HOA walked over. He had his phone out. He asked Karen what happened. She answered with loud, dramatic motions. She told him everything. The HOA man listened with a forced calm. I thought about stepping forward. Explaining. Confessing. Telling them everything was my doing. But the words sat at the back of my throat. They tasted heavy. They would shift the shape of everything. If I told the truth, I could be punished. If I didn't, I could keep my quiet life. So I stayed silent. The officers finished asking questions and left with a list of things to check. Structural damage looks minor, one of them said. Probably a faulty log or a bad burning procedure, another added. They didn't mention the footprints. They didn't look for motive. They didn't imagine a woman with a clipboard stealing wood at night. People went back to their houses slowly. Conversations continued in low tones. Phones lit faces like small fires. I walked back to my home. My legs felt like they were walking through water. Inside, the house was the same as before. The kettle on the stove. The same coffee mug on the counter. Yet nothing felt quite the same. I sat back down. The tea had gone cold. I thought of Karen. Of the way she smiled when she took the logs. Of the way she had made small rules to feel big. I thought of power. How small acts could grow into a kind of cruelty. How rules could be used like a weapon. I thought of the moment she screamed, the ash on her hair, the way her voice cracked. In the nights after the explosion, rumors moved faster than the police reports. People said things. She probably bought cheap wood from a vendor. She put wet logs into a fireplace. She must have been smoking something inside. She's making it into a big deal. Someone whispered my name. It was soft. A question. I felt it like a breath against my ear. I had to watch my street differently now. Neighbors looked at each other with new eyes. Sympathy for Karen mixed with suspicion for everyone. Karen didn't come to HOA meetings for a while. She avoided the front porches. She sent terse messages to a few people, explaining she was fine, the fireplace had been a freak accident. Behind closed doors, she paced. She called contractors. She scrubbed her siding with stubborn hands. Weeks later, the HOA would send a note about safety. A polite reminder about fireplace procedures and approved vendors. An official tone to calm the nerves. But on the nights that followed the blast, the street felt different. Edges were sharper. People walked with lighter steps, as if avoiding some invisible ash. Within me, there was a mix of things I could not name. Relief. Yes. Relief that she had stopped coming to my yard. Remorse? Maybe. A faint, distant echo. Satisfaction. A steady, quiet thing that warmed the center of me. I kept replaying the scene in my head. Her face. The smoke. The way the neighborhood gathered like a flock. I knew life would move on. It always does. But things change after something breaks. Trust thins. Rules become warnings instead of guidance. People watch their neighbors like strangers. For my part, I learned something about myself. That I could hold a deep calm. That I could plan and wait. That I could make choices that would change others. I also learned that consequences have weight. They don't vanish when the day ends. They sit in the bones. They shape who we are after the noise fades. And when it all quieted down, there was one clear truth. Power is fragile. It can be taken. But once taken, it leaves a mark. Some marks heal. Some do not. I watched the neighborhood from my window. A quiet place that no longer looked quite the same. And I realized how small and sharp the line was between order and chaos. That night the blast had changed more than a chimney. It changed the way we all lived near each other. It taught us to be careful who we let make rules. It taught us that control without kindness is hollow. And somewhere, under all that ash and anger, I felt a sliver of peace. Because the thing that had been taken from me, the feeling of being safe in my own yard, was starting to return. But I also knew this was not over. There would be talk. There would be consequence. There would be choices to make. And when the time came to face those choices, I would be ready. Karen wasn't just angry. She was spiraling. After the HOA meeting, she tried to reassert control in every possible way. New community guidelines. New fines. New notices slipped under doors in the early morning, printed on her favorite cream-colored paper with that passive-aggressive cursive header. Friendly neighborhood reminder. But the neighborhood wasn't buying it anymore. People had seen her snap in public. They'd seen her face turn a color similar to ripe tomatoes. They watched her storm home like a volcano learning to walk. Something had changed. Her power wasn't fear anymore. It was embarrassment. And embarrassment is dangerous, especially for someone obsessed with control. Days passed. I kept things quiet. No retaliation. No movement. Just patience. Because revenge only works if the other person still believes they're winning. Karen believed she had regained control of the neighborhood. And I let her. But every evening, after the sun dipped down and the streetlights blinked on one by one, I went into my garage. Where the hollow logs sat. Where the powder rested, perfectly packed. Where the plan breathed like a sleeping animal, waiting for a touch to wake it. I wasn't in a rush. Revenge isn't fast food. It's slow cooked. I watched Karen through the window some nights. She didn't know I could see her. She had this routine. Change into her robe, pour a glass of wine, sit by the fireplace for hours. The fire was her pride. Her luxury. Her comfort. The same firewood she stole from me, piece by piece. The same fireplace she bragged about at HOA meetings. The same embers she stared into while she told others how to live. That fireplace was her throne. Which made it the perfect fuse. The night everything aligned. It snowed. Not heavy. Just enough to quiet the world. That soft, peaceful silence that only winter nights can make. The kind of night where every sound feels louder. More dramatic. More permanent. I put on my jacket. Scarf. Gloves. And I walked to the woodpile. My own woodpile. My real one. The one I kept hidden behind the shed. Real wood burns hot and slow and honest. There's something almost sacred about it. I ran my hand across the rough bark. This, I thought, is what winter is supposed to be. Warmth earned. Not stolen. But tonight wasn't about warmth. It was about balance. I walked back to my garage. Opened the door. Looked at the pile of hollow logs. They were perfect. Indistinguishable from the real thing. Lightweight, but not too lightweight. The grain matched. The cuts matched. Weeks of work, sanding, matching, comparing. All for one moment. I loaded them into a simple cardboard box. No labels. Nothing memorable. Then I walked outside. The streets were silent. Houses dark. Everyone inside, wrapped in blankets and quiet routines. Except Karen. Her house still had the fireplace glow flickering in the windows. And that was the key. I didn't need to sneak into her yard. She would take these logs herself. Because of course she would. She believed everything belonged to her. I placed the box beside my woodpile. Perfectly visible. Perfectly reachable. Perfectly tempting. And then I went inside. Turned off all the lights. And waited. Hours passed. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. Then 2 a.m. Finally. I heard it. The soft creak of my backyard gate. The one she made me replace. Footsteps in the snow. Slow. Deliberate. Not even trying to be quiet. Karen never believed she was doing anything wrong. I watched through the window. She approached the box. Looked at it. Touched the wood. Glanced around. Then nodded to herself. She took the first piece. Then another. Then the entire box. Struggling slightly under the weight, but determined. Control wasn't about comfort. It was about possession. She didn't even know what she was stealing. But she would learn. Soon. She carried the logs across her yard. Up her patio steps. Through her back door. I tracked her silhouette through windows like frames in a silent movie. She placed the first log into the fire. It didn't ignite immediately. This part was important. Hollow logs burn slower. They heat from the inside. The pressure builds. Gradually. Quietly. Until there's nowhere left for the fire to go. Like rage. Like resentment. Like justice. I watched the silhouette of her sitting in her chair, wine glass in hand. The fire glowed. Flickered. Brightened. Brightened again. Brightened more. And then. A small thump from inside the fireplace. She sat up. Tilted her head. Another thump. Then the flames surged outward. Just enough to make her jump up, stumbling back, wine spilling across her carpet. And that's when she realized. The logs weren't logs. They were warnings. Not explosions. Not destruction. Just a message. I see you. I know. And I'm done letting you take anything from me. Her face. Her panic. Her confusion. I didn't need to hear it to know exactly what she whispered in that moment. How? She called the fire department. Of course she did. And they came. And they checked. And they found. No accelerant. No gas leak. No chemical residue. Just firewood. Nothing she could report. Nothing she could blame. Nothing she could control. The neighborhood learned what I already knew. Not everything burns to destroy. Some things burn to teach. And some lessons. are learned in flames. Karen didn't sleep that night. I didn't need to see her to know it. There's a certain kind of silence a house has when someone inside is pacing. Lights flicker from room to room. Curtains move. Shadows shift. You can feel it. She had been shaken in a way Karen had never been shaken before. Not by fire. Not by danger. But by the one thing she feared most. Losing control. The next morning, I stepped outside like it was just another day. Snow crisp. Air cold. Quiet, except for the faint hum of heaters behind closed doors. But something felt different. Not in me. In the neighborhood. People were watching. From windows. From porches. From partially opened blinds. Word had spread. Karen's fireplace had nearly exploded. Her perfect sanctuary, her symbol of status, had betrayed her. And she didn't know how. Or why. Or who. But the neighborhood did. Not because they knew what I did. But because for the first time. Karen looked small. Later that morning, she marched across the street. Still in her robe. Slippers wet with snow. Eyes wild from no sleep. No clipboard this time. No prepared speech. No artificial smile plastered on like makeup. This was the real Karen. The one beneath the rules and pretend kindness. The one ruled by insecurity. She didn't knock. She pounded. I let her. Then I opened the door. Her voice cracked before she even said a word. What did you do? No accusations. No threats. Just fear. Real, human fear. The kind that comes from realizing your world is not yours to command. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I simply looked at her. Calm. Steady. Silent. Because silence is power. And she finally knew it. Her breathing broke. Her shoulders shook. She stepped back like the cold finally hit her. I never meant. She started. But she didn't finish. Because she knew that would be a lie. Karen always meant it. The fines. The humiliation. The control. The disrespect. The taking. The taking. The taking. Everything she did was intentional. She didn't take my firewood because she needed it. She took it because she believed I couldn't stop her. Now she didn't know what else I could do. And that was the real fire. She turned. Walked back. Slow. Small. The queen of the neighborhood had no crown left. The change didn't happen overnight. Real change never does. But the cracks were visible. At the next HOA meeting, for the first time ever, Karen didn't sit at the head of the table. She sat quietly. Hands folded. Eyes down. When a motion was raised to elect a new president, Karen didn't argue. She didn't debate. She didn't threaten lawsuit reminders and regulation codes like she always did. She just stared at the table and said nothing at all. The vote passed. And just like that, Karen wasn't in charge anymore. Her rule had ended not with a fight, but with silence. Weeks passed. The snow thawed. Spring peeked through. The neighborhood felt lighter. People waved more. Talked more. Smiled more. Children played in yards again without fear of complaint letters. No one checked mailbox times. No one measured grass height. And no one stole firewood. Ever again. And Karen? She stayed. But not as the villain. Not as the queen. Just as a person. Some days, she tried to rebuild her sense of belonging. She made small talk. Joined community events. Brought cookies to gatherings. She didn't apologize directly. People like Karen rarely do. But we didn't need the words. Her silence was the apology. And my silence was the acceptance. Not forgiveness. Just understanding. Because revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about reminding them you are not theirs to control. And once control breaks, everything changes. One quiet evening, near the end of winter, I sat outside with a real log burning in my fireplace. The kind of fire that warms, not threatens. The air was calm. The sky clear. The neighborhood peaceful. And across the street, in her window, Karen sat by her own fireplace. A real log burning there, too. No wine this time. Just tea. No pride. Just presence. She looked out. Saw me. And nodded. Not a greeting. A recognition. Of boundaries. Of respect. Of shared understanding. No words were needed. Sometimes the best endings are quiet. Because the real fire was never in the wood. It was in the lesson. And the lesson had already been learned.